When the Jubilee Line first opened in 1979, London Underground passengers were introduced to a modern extension of the network that aimed to connect growing areas and relieve congestion on other lines. Among its stations was Charing Cross, a central hub already serving the Northern and Bakerloo lines. The Jubilee Line platforms at Charing Cross were built beneath the bustling Strand and Villiers Street area, providing a convenient interchange for commuters in the heart of the city. For 2 decades, these platforms functioned as part of the everyday London commute, carrying thousands of passengers who relied on their sleek grey tiling and modern escalators to whisk them in and out of the West End. Yet despite their importance in the early years, Charing Cross was destined to become a curious anomaly in London's underground history. When the Jubilee Line was extended eastward toward Westminster, Canary Wharf, and eventually Stratford in the 1990s, the route bypassed Charing Cross altogether. As a result, the platforms were closed in 1999, sealed off from regular public access. Unlike other abandoned stations that fell into disrepair, however, the Charing Cross Jubilee Line platforms did not fade into obscurity. Instead, they found an unusual afterlife, becoming one of the most sought-after film and television sets in London. Their intact escalators, long-tiled corridors, and familiar underground signage offered filmmakers a ready-made location to recreate realistic tube journeys without disrupting the daily flow of passengers. From action-packed thrillers to blockbuster spy films, the ghost platforms at Charing Cross have lived on in cinema even more vividly than they ever did in real commuting life. This unusual transition from transport necessity to cultural landmark makes them one of the most fascinating ghost stations in the city, blending hidden history with pop culture allure. The closure of the Jubilee Line platforms at Charing Cross in 1999 was not an accident of neglect, but rather a deliberate choice born out of necessity. During the planning of the Jubilee Line extension, London Underground faced the challenge of connecting central London more effectively to the growing business districts at Canary Wharf and later to Stratford, which would become vital during the 2012 Olympics. The new extension created a more direct and efficient route by diverting the line southward from Green Park to Westminster and across the Thames, completely bypassing Charing Cross. This meant that the original Jubilee platforms at Charing Cross suddenly had no role to play in passenger services. Instead of demolishing them, the decision was made to close the platforms while keeping the surrounding infrastructure intact. Escalators, signage, tiling, and even ticket halls connected to the Jubilee Line section remained frozen in time, as if the last passenger had just departed minutes before. This eerie preservation has given the site an uncanny atmosphere, like stepping into a time capsule of 1990s London Underground design. For transport enthusiasts, it has become a quiet legend, a reminder that even in a city as bustling and ever-changing as London, certain spaces can be sealed off and left untouched for decades. The trains no longer stop, and the platforms are blocked from public access, but their existence is not entirely forgotten. Londoners often walk just a few meters above without realizing an entire subterranean world lies hidden below their feet. The abandoned Charing Cross platforms are still linked to operational parts of the Underground, used occasionally for staff training, emergency exercises, and behind-the-scenes maintenance drills. Their strange dual identities, silent to the public but alive for specific uses, cements their reputation as one of the most unusual ghost spaces on the network. It is this blend of historical function and modern secrecy that makes Charing Cross more than just another disused station. It is a silent witness to how London reshapes itself while still leaving footprints of the past. Beneath its surface, what makes the disused Jubilee Line platforms at Charing Cross especially fascinating is the way they have become a bridge between reality and fiction, transforming from a piece of urban infrastructure into a cinematic stage. Once the doors closed to commuters, filmmakers quickly recognized the location's unique value, a fully operational underground environment with escalators, ticket barriers, signage, and platforms, all without the constant flow of passengers. This meant directors could shoot scenes on the tube without needing to disrupt daily transport schedules or rely on costly sets built from scratch. The space has since been used in countless productions, ranging from gritty dramas to high-octane blockbusters. For instance, fans of the James Bond franchise will recognize Charing Cross's ghost platforms from films like Skyfall 2012, where Daniel Craig's 007 sprints through tunnels and onto the tracks in a tense chase sequence. The authenticity of the surroundings heightened the realism, immersing audiences in the illusion of a working underground station. Similarly, The location has appeared in other iconic titles such as The Bourne Ultimatum, 28 Weeks Later, and even in television dramas like Spooks, further cementing its reputation as one of London's favorite hidden filming sets. What makes these appearances particularly striking is that audiences often assume the filmmakers shut down parts of the active underground for shooting, when in reality, they are witnessing a secret world below Charing Cross that ordinary commuters never see. In this way, the platforms have achieved a second life, one far more glamorous and global than their original purpose of simply moving people across the city. They serve as an example of how urban spaces can be repurposed creatively, blending hidden history with cultural imagination. Each time a film crew descends into the closed-off corridors, the Jubilee Line platforms become more than a forgotten footnote. They are reborn as backdrops for stories of espionage, horror, and adventure, reminding us that even silent, abandoned places can have powerful voices on the silver screen, beyond their role in blockbuster cinema. The Jubilee Line platforms at Charing Cross have also become a vital training ground for London Underground staff and emergency services, because the platforms remain structurally sound and are still connected to operational tunnels. They provide an ideal environment for conducting drills without disturbing passengers. The London Fire Brigade, Transport for London's emergency response units, and even police teams have all used the disused platforms for exercises ranging from simulated fires to evacuation procedures. In a city where the safety of millions of daily commuters depends on preparedness, having a realistic yet controlled underground environment is invaluable. The platforms allow staff to practice navigating smoke-filled tunnels, coordinating crowd control, and responding to high-pressure situations that mirror potential real-life crises. This hidden function gives the site a new kind of importance. While no longer a passenger hub, it remains central to the safety and resilience of the network. At the same time, this practical use adds to the station's mystique, as most Londoners are unaware that beneath the bustling Strand and Trafalgar Square, teams regularly rehearse scenarios designed to protect lives. These dual identities, part film set, part training centre, make Charing Cross one of the most versatile ghost stations in London. Its closed platforms are a reminder that disuse does not always equal decay. Instead, spaces can be adapted to serve evolving needs. To the casual passerby walking the streets above, the site might seem silent and forgotten, but below ground, it is alive with activity. Whether that means a camera crew staging a high-speed chase or emergency responders perfecting life-saving techniques, in this way, the Jubilee Line platforms maintain a quiet yet ongoing contribution to London life, ensuring that their story is not one of neglect but of transformation and reinvention. Rather than being erased from history, they continue to evolve, proving that even the city's hidden spaces can find new relevance long after the last commuter train has departed. The atmosphere of the abandoned Jubilee Line platforms at Charing Cross is unlike that of any ordinary tube station. Walking down its escalators, which remain functional but eerily silent, visitors are struck by the sense of stepping into a frozen moment of time. The station still bears the familiar grey wall tiling, the classic roundel signage, and the industrial hum of distant ventilation systems, yet without the rush of footsteps, chatter of commuters, or screech of trains. It feels almost uncanny. This unique ambience is part of what makes the platform so appealing both to filmmakers and to those lucky enough to join. Special tours occasionally organized for enthusiasts. The silence of the tunnels has a cinematic quality in itself, lending an atmosphere of suspense and intrigue. It is easy to imagine ghosts of commuters passing through, hurrying to catch trains that will never arrive. The space also provokes reflection on the transient nature of infrastructure, how quickly once crucial facilities can become redundant and hidden from public life. For urban explorers and historians, Charing Cross's closed Jubilee platforms represent a rare chance to encounter London's underground not as a daily utility but as an archaeological site of modern history. Every tiled corridor and unused lift shaft tells a story of a city constantly reshaping itself to meet new needs, sometimes leaving behind entire structures in the process. The station's ghostly quietness and preserved authenticity make it more than just a curiosity. It becomes a stage where imagination runs wild. One might picture secret wartime operations unfolding here, or clandestine meetings taking place in the darkened corridors, even though in reality its history is far more mundane. Still, the psychological power of such abandoned yet intact places cannot be underestimated. They capture the mystery of the city beneath the city, a hidden world that exists just meters away from everyday life yet feels infinitely distant. This atmosphere of half-forgotten history and modern myth is why the Charing Cross ghost platforms continue to fascinate not only filmmakers and transport experts, but also anyone intrigued by the unseen layers of London. One of the most intriguing aspects of the Jubilee Line platforms at Charing Cross is how they blur the line between public memory and hidden history. For many Londoners who commuted during the 1980s and 1990s, memories of actually using these platforms are still vivid, waiting under the fluorescent lights, hearing the rush of trains entering the station, and hurrying up the escalators toward Trafalgar Square or the Strand. Yet for younger generations, the platforms are less a lived experience and more a myth whispered about in documentaries, books, and online forums dedicated to ghost stations. This generational divide has given the site a strange dual identity: part nostalgia for those who once relied on it, part legend for those who have never set foot on it. The fact that the platforms remain sealed from everyday access only strengthens this aura of mystery. Occasionally, when behind the scenes, photographs or videos surface showing crews filming or emergency drills taking place, social media buzzes with fascination, as if a secret door to the past has briefly swung open. Urban myths have even begun to wrap themselves around the platforms, with stories ranging from supposed hauntings to secret government usage. While much of this is imagination, the secrecy that shrouds the space makes such tales believable to those who long for hidden narratives beneath London's streets. What is most striking is how the physical environment of the platform's untouched signage, vintage tiling, and period lighting keeps the past alive in a way that a museum exhibit never could. This is not a reconstruction or a replica. It is the real thing, preserved in situ beneath the heart of the capital. As a result, the Charing Cross Jubilee Line platforms have come to symbolize the hidden layers of London itself, a city built on top of itself, where history is not destroyed but buried, waiting to be rediscovered. In this sense, the station is more than just a relic of the transport system. It is a monument to the way cities evolve, leaving behind traces of their former selves in the shadows below ground. The continued fascination with the Charing Cross Jubilee Line platforms also speaks to London's long tradition of hidden spaces and forgotten tunnels. The underground network is riddled with stations that have been closed, rerouted, or abandoned, but few are as well preserved or as frequently reused as Charing Cross. In this sense, it stands apart from places like Aldwych, which is also used for filming but has been out of service for much longer, or British Museum Station, which has vanished almost entirely from view. Charing Cross occupies a rare middle ground, neither entirely forgotten nor fully alive. It exists in a state of suspended animation. This has given it an unusual symbolic power, reminding Londoners that the city's infrastructure is never truly fixed but is instead in constant flux. The Jubilee extension may have redirected the line toward Westminster and Canary Wharf, but the ghost of its original route remains embedded in these sealed platforms. For cultural historians, this makes Charing Cross a perfect example of how cities embody layers of time. A person standing above a Trafalgar Square is literally on top of centuries of history: Roman remains, medieval foundations, Victorian sewers, and now unused tube platforms. The Jubilee Line platforms are a recent addition to this palimpsest, yet they already carry the weight of nostalgia and legend. They highlight how even spaces less than 50 years old can quickly slip into the realm of heritage when removed from daily life. Moreover, their continued presence also sparks debate about urban reuse and the future of abandoned infrastructure. Should these platforms remain locked away, serving only as backdrops for spy films and training drills, or could they one day be repurposed for new cultural, commercial, or transport functions? These questions keep the platforms relevant not only as a curiosity but as part of wider discussions on how cities evolve. Charing Cross reminds us that urban environments are not static. They are constantly negotiating between the past, the present, and the possibilities of the future. The question of whether the Jubilee Line platforms at Charing Cross could ever reopen to the public is one that often surfaces among transport enthusiasts and city planners. On a purely technical level, the platforms are still functional, trains pass by them, the tracks are intact, and the station's basic infrastructure has been preserved. However, the reality is far more complicated. Since the extension in 1999 rerouted the Jubilee Line through Westminster and Waterloo, the new alignment completely bypasses Charing Cross, meaning there is no longer a practical reason for trains to stop there. The station's location is also served adequately by the Northern and Bakerloo lines, reducing the argument for reactivating the Jubilee platforms. From an operational standpoint, reopening them would require not only significant financial investment, but also an overhaul of signaling, staffing, and passenger flow systems. In many ways, it would be more expensive and less efficient than simply keeping the platforms as they are closed, yet preserved. Nevertheless, the idea of reopening persists in the public imagination, partly because of the platform's visibility in films and documentaries. Seeing actors sprint across the tiled corridors or escape through its escalators makes the place feel alive again, raising the question of why ordinary commuters are denied access. Some argue that the platforms could be repurposed for alternative uses, such as an underground museum dedicated to the history of the Jubilee Line, an arts venue, or even a themed attraction showcasing London's ghost stations. Such proposals remain speculative, but they highlight the cultural significance the platforms have acquired. What was once simply part of a commuter network is now considered a landmark in its own right. For now, however, their semi-hidden status adds to their charm. The platforms are not gone, yet not accessible, existing in a liminal state that fuels both curiosity and creativity. Their future remains uncertain, but their legend only grows stronger with each passing year, as people continue to wonder whether they will forever remain closed or eventually find a new chapter in London's ever-evolving underground story. The use of Charing Cross's Jubilee Line platforms in popular culture has given them an almost mythic status, elevating them far beyond their original role as simple commuter infrastructure. When Daniel Craig's James Bond dashed through its corridors in Skyfall, or when Matt Damon's Jason Bourne navigated the shadowy tunnels in The Bourne Ultimatum, the platforms became part of cinematic history. These appearances allow audiences around the world, many of whom may never visit London, to feel a strange familiarity with a space that no longer functions for everyday travel. This cinematic immortality ensures that the platforms live on in collective memory, not just for transport enthusiasts but for global fans of film. What makes these appearances particularly powerful is the authenticity of the location. Unlike sets built in studios, the disused Jubilee Line platforms are the real deal, genuine underground architecture, untouched by CGI, carrying the weight of decades of history. Viewers subconsciously sense this authenticity, and it heightens the tension and realism of every scene shot there. At the same time, these films contribute to the mystique of the platforms by reinforcing the idea that they are secret, hidden places accessible only to those in the know. Each new cinematic use adds another layer of myth, as though the platforms exist not just beneath Trafalgar Square but also in a parallel world where spies, fugitives, and heroes play out their stories. This blending of fiction and reality ensures that Charing Cross remains alive in the imagination, even if its platforms remain sealed off to the public. Beyond cinema, the platforms have appeared in television shows, advertisements, and even music videos, each time shaping how the world perceives London's underground. They demonstrate how spaces that once served purely functional purposes can be reborn as cultural icons, reshaped by the stories we tell about them. In this way, the Jubilee Line platforms at Charing Cross are no longer just a ghost station, they are a canvas for modern mythology, where the boundaries between transport history and storytelling blur into one. The story of the Charing Cross Jubilee Line platforms also reflects a broader truth about London, that the city thrives on reinvention while never quite letting go of its past. Unlike cities that demolish obsolete infrastructure, London often leaves it intact, quietly hidden, waiting for a new purpose. This philosophy is evident not only in the underground but also in the way Victorian sewers, Roman walls, and wartime bunkers are preserved beneath the modern metropolis. Charing Cross's closed platforms are part of this continuum, an underground relic that speaks to both the resilience and adaptability of the city. What once was purely practical has now become symbolic. In their silence, the platforms remind us of the impermanence of even the most central urban spaces, one day bustling with thousands of passengers, the next day sealed away, accessible only to film crews or emergency services. Yet this transformation also underscores the creativity of urban reuse. Instead of being forgotten, the platforms have been reimagined as cultural assets and training facilities, proving that disuse does not mean uselessness. They show how history can be preserved not just in museums but in living, breathing spaces that continue to evolve in new roles. For visitors and Londoners alike, the fascination with Charing Cross is tied to this sense of continuity. It reassures us that the city does not discard its past entirely but folds it into its future, creating layers of meaning beneath the surface. Even though commuters no longer hear the rattle of Jubilee Line trains pulling into the platforms, the space still contributes to the city's identity in subtle but powerful ways, whether through its cinematic appearances, its behind-the-scenes role in safety drills, or its whispered reputation as a ghost station. Charing Cross continues to shape the narrative of London's underground. It stands as a reminder that the life of a station is not defined solely by its passengers, but also by the stories it continues to inspire long after its official closure. Another fascinating dimension of the Jubilee Line platforms at Charing Cross is how they feed into the growing trend of urban exploration, even if only through imagination and storytelling rather than physical access. While the platforms themselves are tightly controlled and not open to the public, they exist in the collective curiosity of those who are drawn to hidden parts of the city. Online forums, photography communities, and transport history groups regularly share images, anecdotes, and speculations about the station. A simple leaked photograph of the tiled corridors or escalators can send enthusiasts into detailed discussions about its design, layout, and history. In this sense, the platforms live on as digital spaces just as much as physical ones, for urban explorers who might never set foot there. The very idea of a locked-away, perfectly preserved tube station beneath central London holds irresistible appeal. This curiosity reflects a deeper human fascination with the unseen, what lies beneath, behind, or beyond our everyday perception. Charing Cross taps into this longing by existing right in the heart of one of the world's busiest cities, yet remaining inaccessible to almost everyone. The secrecy surrounding the site has even fueled myths about alternative government use or hidden tunnels leading to Parliament, echoing similar stories told about other closed stations. Whether true or not, these tales demonstrate how absence creates presence. The very fact that the platforms are sealed adds to their mystique. They are a reminder that London is not just a surface-level city but a layered one, with entire forgotten worlds beneath its streets. This idea captivates people who see the modern metropolis not just as a place of glass towers and busy squares, but as an endless archaeological dig, where every level down reveals a new chapter of history. In this way, Charing Cross's ghost platforms are not simply abandoned transport infrastructure, they are catalysts for imagination, sparking stories, myths, and artistic inspiration that ensure they remain alive in the minds of those who seek to uncover London's secrets. In the end, the story of the Jubilee Line platforms at Charing Cross is not just about a closed station, it is about how cities evolve, how spaces adapt, and how memory shapes meaning. What began as a transport hub in 1979 became obsolete by 1999. Yet instead of fading away, the platforms found new life in unexpected ways. They became film sets for some of the most recognizable movies of the modern era, training grounds for the safety of millions, and symbols of London's layered history. Their story illustrates the resilience of urban spaces. Even when stripped of their original purpose, they can continue to serve, inspire, and intrigue. For Londoners, the sealed platforms are a reminder that beneath the ordinary rhythm of daily life lies a hidden world, silent corridors, frozen escalators, and unused tracks waiting in the dark. For the global audience, they represent the magic of cinema and the allure of the unseen city. They are proof that infrastructure is more than just concrete, steel, and tiles. It is a canvas for stories, a backdrop for myths, and a reservoir of collective memory. The Charing Cross Jubilee Line platforms embody a paradox: closed, yet alive; abandoned, yet relevant; forgotten, yet unforgettable. They remind us that the past is never truly gone. It lingers beneath our feet, shaping the present in quiet but powerful ways. As long as filmmakers, historians, urban explorers, and ordinary dreamers continue to imagine what lies beyond those sealed gates, the platforms will never truly be silent. They stand as guardians of hidden London, holding within them not just the echoes of trains and commuters, but the timeless fascination of the city's underground heart. And perhaps that is their greatest role, not as a station that moves people across space, but as a story that moves people across time.